I've just seen the interview, the playback of the interview, which is recorded on YouTube of Aishah Azmi, BBC Two, I think it was Newsnight, where she was questioned there on the Newsnight show whether or not she was aware that when she took the interview, when she went for the job at the school, whether she was aware or not that this was a Church of England school and that a Church of England school might not have been advisable for her to wear the veil. And it was fascinating to watch the interview progress. And it's something that shows me, and I see it an awful lot when I'm working with Muslims at Speaker's Corner. What they tell you publicly is not necessarily what they'll tell you privately. And this was really brought clear in this interview. You start seeing her very robust response every time the interviewer asked her a question concerning her job, concerning why she wore the veil. She had these practiced responses that were very, certainly quite passionate. And they were the same exact responses that we've heard her repeat over and over again in other news channels. But then when he started asking her about how is it that she even got interviewed for the job, and whether while she at the interview there was a male at the interview, and she said yes, his name was Mr. Smith, my name. And when the interviewer asked, well, was he or were you, when you were being interviewed, did you wear the veil? Suddenly there was a change of attitude. She looked down. You couldn't see her face. She was covered, so we couldn't see her expression on her face, but you could just imagine the expression on her face. And then she said, could you repeat the question? Or I can't understand what you're saying. Or at one point she even says, do I have to answer that question? And it was obvious that she was very uncomfortable. We didn't have to see her face at that time. It was obvious from just her nonverbals of her body and the way she tilted her head that she was very uncomfortable with the question. And when the interviewer pressed her on it, that she was actually being interviewed for the job with her face uncovered. It was not a problem at that time. Suddenly it's now a problem now that she's in the classroom situation. She can't have any male colleague see her face. That was a contradiction in terms, and also that this was disingenuous of her to do this. She finally had to admit. And I thought it was a fascinating example of what we know as the public versus the private face of Islam. This is the public face that many Muslims will show you when they're in a discussion with you, when they're arguing with you. But when you finally take them over and you get close to them, and you get over a cup of tea at a neutral environment, when that relationship does form, you start to see the private face. We saw it in just a 5-minute segment of interview there on Newsnight just a few nights ago. And it concerns an awful lot of us as to why this has to happen. And I think it's something that we need to be aware of. I've asked many of my Muslim friends why they do this and why they don't give us that first face, that private face from the very beginning, so we know who we're dealing with. And so we don't have these embarrassments like Aishah Azmi had there in front of national television, in front of the whole world. And the response that I've got from some of my Muslim friends is this: well, when Muslims live in this country, or when they live outside of a Muslim context, when they live in a Western context, they are in what they call Dar al Harb, which means house of war. They come out of Dar al Islam, house of Islam, into the house of war. And the word itself, the word that is given, the word that is used, describes exactly what the context that they live in. They live in the context of war. And when you're in the context of war, you can say anything you want. It's not important that you tell the truth necessarily, and certainly it's not important you tell people what you actually believe, because you're in a context of war. When you're in a war, you don't tell the enemy what your intentions are. When you're in war, you can lie to them, you can deceive them. It's perfectly legitimate to do so. And if you believe yourself to be in that context, it stands to reason then, it's quite understandable then why Aishah Azmi said what she said. But we need to be very careful of that, not to believe everything that Muslims say point blank. It's not that I hate Muslims for doing this. I can understand their viewpoint. It disturbs me, however, that many people are being duped by it. And it's tragic. It's unfortunate the way Aishah was caught out there on national television. I hope this doesn't happen again. And I hope really that Muslims realize that as Westerners and those of us who live here, when we ask someone really what their intentions are, and they seem passionate about it, we assume that that is their real intention. We assume that they really believe what they say. We assume that they are consistent in their beliefs. And it helps nobody, them or us, if they're duping us or deceiving us or saying things that they don't believe or just trying to win the argument or trying to press home an advantage. It doesn't help anybody, certainly in this kind of debate. There is no answer for that other than the fact that if we would be honest and open from the very beginning and not be ashamed of the fact that maybe we don't live consistently with our beliefs. If we could start from that premise, things would go a lot better. I hope that's been helpful. Let's hear your responses to this. Certainly, it's been one of those eye-opening type of situations that just happened the last week. This is Jay then, over and out.